Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you guys could join us today. My name is Ken Duranzio, and by way of introduction, I will actually run a quick presentation just to let you know where we are and where we're going from here. I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen, actually, probably not. Let me redo that. I was about to run through the whole prezo without even showing it to you. Okay, how are we? Good? I think we're showing the right one. Okay, so soSIMPLE calendar. This is going to be a tutorial. It's a sort of a combined intro and tutorial. I would like to get an idea of how many people have actually. I did that. We actually asked this during the registration process, but I'd like to ask again, who has actually been using soSIMPLE and in what degree, because that gives us an idea of sort of how we're presenting and what aspects we're showing. So there should be a poll popping up on your screen, just asking that question again, and feel free to answer that or not as we go forward. So soSIMPLE calendar. What we're talking about today is integration and what it takes to integrate soSIMPLE into your custom app. So soSIMPLE, so I'll talk about who I am. Ken Duranzio, developing about 29 years. I'm a co-founder of Paradise Partners, and where you tend to find me is hanging out on the jagged edge of FileMaker and other technologies. I like to play around with what's possible in native FileMaker, alongside with what we can learn from other tech, like JavaScript, like HTML, and you can really expand what's possible in FileMaker. And where I think we've taken this product and some of the other tools that we've worked with is we've simplified that for you. We've taken what I like to play with this sort of crazy, sort of bleeding edge stuff, and make it simple and accessible. And that was sort of the nature of and the design of soSIMPLE. So why are we talking about calendars today? So everybody's got them, right? Google makes a calendar, Microsoft makes one, Apple makes one. There are thousands of these things out on the web available to use. Chances are you guys use a calendar too, and that's in fact, if you could let me know what calendars you guys use. I'd be curious to see just which calendars you use day to day. But the thought is this, right? So why are these calendars so popular? Why does everybody have them? Why is everybody using them? And why aren't we using them in FileMaker? So most of us think visually. It's intuitive to drag and drop events around the calendar as we need them, see them visually laid out by the week, by the day, see where the open areas are. And so your customer is used to seeing things that way. They see things that way in Google, Outlook, and Apple. And more as we develop in FileMaker, we start seeing that there are expectations that are created from other technologies that now the customer really starts to expect in your FileMaker solution. And that's where we're sort of coming from with this. So soSIMPLE was developed in 2010. It was developed as a modern interface for managing your schedule. It's intended to emulate and then go beyond, in a lot of ways, a lot of the features of these other calendars, with its main feature being that it hooks up directly to your events table in FileMaker. It was designed to be easy to use for your client and easy for you to integrate. I'll go back to this in a little bit, but this is referencing, we have on our website a tutorial called the 5-minute integration guide for two different versions of soSIMPLE. We're gonna talk more about how that works, but that's really the integration process. Find that on our website, and that gives you sort of the guidelines of what we're going to be discussing when we get into the integration portion of this. Again, designed for easy, deep integration. This is not just I stick a calendar on my page and hope in my database and hope everything works as expected. It really gives you the ability to go in and do deep integration, make customization changes with an interface without having to guess sort of what's going to happen. And the calendar itself, it just has a whole bunch of different ways to view your events. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of scheduling stuff. And finally, soSIMPLE was designed to push out to smartphones, to the web, with or without WebDirect, to your iPad, touch devices, remote satellite users. So it works on any device, any platform, anywhere. So I'm going to go over the steps of integration, then I'm going to step back a little bit and go over a quick overview of what is soSIMPLE. But I do want to lay out the integration, and then I'm going to go into the hands-on demo. So the integration process in soSIMPLE looks like this. You go in, you configure your database, and I'll go through step by step, obviously. Configure your database with the permissions it needs and the layouts it needs to set up your configuration. Then you pick your fields that you're going to use for your calendar. You copy the scripts into your file. Then you copy the calendar into your file, and then you roll it out wherever you need it, whether you need it in your file, on WebDirect, on the web, or in wherever you need it on your phone. Now, I always do like to connect one-on-one, so I'm actually going to step back for a moment here, if I can figure out how, because I got a whole bunch of interfaces here popping up on my screen. Just going to make myself visible because I forgot to do that, and it's nice to connect one-on-one with people. So while I'm doing the demo, if that's helpful, otherwise I think you can minimize me. As is this. Thought I was all set for you guys. Give me one sec. Okay, when you first download soSIMPLE, you're downloading two files, two FileMaker files. One is soSIMPLE Calendar, is the name of it, and the other one is called soSIMPLE Calendar Settings. So soSIMPLE Calendar is our starter solution. What's great about the starter solution is it works as a showcase also to show you what the features and options are. And as we release new features, we update the starter solution to showcase them. So I'm just going to go into the calendar and go through some of those features. Okay, so we're looking at the week view. soSIMPLE is a drag and drop calendar. So just like you would expect, you can drag and drop, and the other events politely moves out of the way. You can stretch it longer. You can move it to a different day. This is the week view. There's also what you would expect, a day view, and same features there, and a month view. In addition to those, we have a whole suite of resource views. So I'm going to go back into that day view. Actually, let me go to a week that has a whole bunch of events first. I'm going to find a good week. There we go. There's a nice week for us. So here's a whole bunch of events. Oh, it's actually a day, sorry. Here's a bunch of events on the 27th of December. And what we're showing at the top are resources. Those resources could be, in this case, there are conference rooms for Orlando. So if you're going to DevCon, you'll see those conference rooms. They could be all sorts of different things. They could be your salespeople, if you're trying to manage where your salespeople are going and when. They could be trucks. They could be edit suites. They could be clinicians. There are a whole bunch. Whatever you're trying to schedule, whether it's resources or if it's whether it's people or things, they're things you're trying to organize. So we're seeing that during this time period, this ballroom is occupied with two different events. And I can say, okay, well, I want to move it, so I'll move it over here. So that's what the resource view is for. This is showing me a single day with the resources along the top and the time along the left side. We can take the same view and we can expand that into a week view. We call that our planner. And it shows the same stuff up top. You can't read it very well because there's a lot of stuff happening that week. There's a lot of resources showing. But the first thing I'll do is I'm going to filter that list out, just to show a few of them, the ones that I actually want to compare right now. And there they are. Still can't really see them too well. So I'm going to go a little further. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to hide the weekends on here, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, now I can see almost all of it. Great. This panel here, if this was gone, I could probably see a little more. There we go. Now I can sort of see the whole week, and it sort of zooms me in so I can take over more of my screen with what's important. So what these little things are, these are sort of a subset of the settings that we have in soSIMPLE. And I'll show you that when we get into the settings area. But these ones can be impacted just by, in the example file, just by clicking these buttons. And what it's impacting is, I'll show you just under the hood real quickly what's happening. So under the hood is what we have is, this is FileMaker native, and this is a web viewer. And so what's happening in that particular screen is we have a bunch of global fields here that are changing the URL. And so the URL, we just added this thing that says hide weekend equals 1 and hide nav equals 1. And that's how we hid the navigation panel and the weekends. I'll get into more about this URL in a couple of minutes. Other views. So now we're looking at this planner and we're saying, okay, well, you know what? I need more. I need to show more of my resources. I can't just be limiting myself to the few that I can see on this week view. I need to really see a timeline for the entire week for all of my resources. So I can do that. And what we did is we just pivoted it so that all the resources are now on the left. And then all the events then happen on the right. And it's the same drag and drop. I can still change the resource, stretch the resource, what have you. And that view is available not only for day and week, it's also available for month. And I can even go a little further. This particular one is a 2-week view, but I can actually stretch that out to anything I want. I can go to here and I can say timeline view equals, let's do 8 months, right? And now I can see 8 months out. Or maybe I want to make that really a projection, which I don't know how easy it's going to be for you all to project out for the next 5 years. But here's a 5-year view of your timeline. So those are the timeline views. And the other unique feature we have, or the other unique view, I should say, that we have is a map view. Now, a map view is really cool because what it shows you, this isn't just a map of a single event, like a lot of, that you can do just in your own database. What a map view does is it shows you how the events are related to each other. So I'm looking at this week of the 24th of December, and I'm seeing, right, there's a whole bunch. As I click on them, I can see which ones they are. There are a whole bunch hovering around Paradise, Nevada. Let's go up to one of the first ones. There are a whole bunch hovering in Paradise, Nevada, and I can see, well, okay, so this one's here and this one's here. Maybe these two salespeople are nearby each other during this week. Maybe I'll either move the time around or move the salespeople around so that they can be in the same place at the same time where they need to be. So by seeing this geographically, it gives you another piece of information very visually that you can organize your schedule around. So that's the purpose of that. And that comes in day, week, month as well. That's grid, sorry. Day, week, month as well, where you can see all these events. And if you wanted to actually see them all, it's just a Google Calendar, so you can see all over the world where they are. And then before I get into the integration, I think we're doing okay on time. I wanted to show you one other. Let's get rid of my net. Let's show my navigation again and show my weekends. And what I wanted to show you was, let's go back to maybe a week view. Or maybe a month view or something. I'm not sure which view. I'm not sure what happened there. So what I wanted to show you is along the task list. So we hold a task list in this solution. I think it's an unscheduled events panel generically in soSIMPLE. And what this does is it gives you things. If you notice, if I go from week to week, you'll see that it stays the same events. It gives you a place to put these events or tasks or whatever your purpose of it, whatever you use it for. It puts them in a holding place that's always on your calendar. And then when you want to schedule it, you can say, right, this task should be scheduled right there. And now that task is scheduled, right? And I can even prompt you. I can say, hey, pretty cool, huh? And then if I decide, wait a minute, you know what, this really is not a good spot for this. Let me put it back on my unscheduled list and I'll think about it later. You can just drag it right back again. So that's the design of that task list. So I don't want to go into all the features of soSIMPLE. There are a lot of them. It would take me a long time. I will show one other one, and then I'm going to go into the integration. The one other one I wanted to show is this background feature, because this is also very unique to soSIMPLE. So background can be either just a plain old background, or it can be a blocked event. And what this does, it lets you reserve time for non-events, for things that aren't actually happening. So I'm going to just isolate this time. I'm going to block it off. It's going to show as a background event. That particular one that I chose was blocked. And what that means is if I try to drag on top of it, it'll just bounce back. Or if I try to drag here, it just won't let me. Just bounce back. So that's another feature that I want to just sort of highlight before I move on. So with that, I'm going to go on to the next stage of this and talk a little bit more about the inside of this and what it takes to integrate this into your solution. So I showed you before, this is a layout. And that's a web viewer. That web viewer is hooked up to our settings file, and I'll show you how that part is set up during the integration. But what I do want to show for now is that what happens when you are moving stuff around, what is actually happening in the back end. So I'm just going to turn on my debugger for a moment so you can see what's actually happening. So whether I'm double-clicking, dragging, or creating a new event, what happens is when I drag that is a script runs in your FileMaker Pro app, and we call this client-side scripting. And what the client-side script does is the very first thing it does, it sets up a bunch of variables. And these are the variables that were automatically set as soon as I dragged. So the one thing I'm noticing is the event type. So the event type is edit. I'm actually, you know what, yeah, I'll do it this way for now. So it could be an open, it could be a new, or it could be an edit. When I drag, because that's what I just did, it's an event type edit. So it's telling me, and it also tells me the event ID. This is the ID of the event that I just am editing. It also is telling me where the new start time and end time are. And so all it's doing is saying, great, edit this event with a from and a to. And so what it's going to do is it's going to go through this script, and it's going to say, so when I find, that's the new, that's the edit. So here it says, if event type is edit, open up a new window off screen, find that event, and set these fields, and then close the window. And that's basically what that process does. There's a bunch of other little utilities we throw in there. I'm gonna actually cancel this one. I'm gonna refresh it and just show you even more simply. If I go back into the debugger, if I go to open, so I just double clicked it, and that shows the event type is open. There's my event ID. All it's going to do at this point is, if I go down to open, there's edit, there's open, event type is open. It just goes to a new window, resizes that window, finds the event based on event ID, and pauses. And then it's going to close the event and update the calendar. So the point of my showing this to you is, one, so you get an idea of the integration. Two is so you understand that this is actually your script. You get to edit this script. This is our example script with a couple of modifications, but ultimately it's your script. You might go to the job instead of the event. You might check for validation of who's logged in and what they're allowed to do. You can go to your whole other layout that it's a whole different type of information. So it's your script. You get to choose the workflow, design it however you want. We're just giving you those parameters that you know what to do with them. So then I just open this. And the other thing I'm going to show real quick on here is that if I go to make this 5 p.m. so it's really obvious, take a look as I close this, all these other events. What's going to happen is this is going to change, and none of the other events will. So I'm going to click done, and you're going to see that event's going to adjust to 5 o'clock, and all the rest stay the same. And so that's another thing that speeds up this soSIMPLE. What makes soSIMPLE fast is that it's not going to go update any of the other events in your calendar. It's not doing any imports, exports. And what it's doing is querying the server, grabbing that single event, and updating that single event on your calendar. Okay. I keep on saying one more thing, but I did want to show you one more thing. So I'm going to do one more thing. I want to just show meetings. There is, believe me, a rhyme to my reason here. The reason I want to do this is because I'm going to show you another feature later on that's really quite cool. So this is a filter I just did. I want to only show meetings. And what I wanted to show about that is how it impacts the URL. This is how it impacted the URL. All I did was say field name equals value of that field. That's what this most basic kind of filter is. The filter is match a field. If that field doesn't match, don't show it on the calendar. And I just show the field name followed by the value. And I'm using a script to set it. It doesn't need to be. It can be a calculated web viewer. It can be within the web viewer calculation. So category equals meeting filters these events to just meetings. Okay, let's get into the settings. So this whole calendar we've been looking at, if I click the settings button, it's going to pop me into the other file you downloaded, which is soSIMPLE calendar settings. And it jumps us right to the one that we're working on, which is the client-side advanced find. This is a preview of your calendar. In the upper left are all the other calendars that we've set up as part of the sample. Any calendar you create after this won't have that little lock and will show up down below it. We don't actually lock the files. We put the lock on there so that you can't delete them. And the main purpose is that way we're able to go in and help you out with some of the default solutions that we've created. Okay. So the upper left of the list of the calendars, each one of them changes what you see on the bottom. So if I go into here, this is the advanced find. If I click on the next one down, you'll notice it changed to my calendar simple and added a second data source, which is an iCal source. And then the phone, we actually have a mobile view that changes the layout to mobile. And as you go through these, it impacts what's on the bottom. So what I want to do now is run through the integration. And then I'm going to show you a couple of other features and open it up to Q&A. But this is what you've all come for, is the integration. So let's go through a very straightforward, simple integration. It all starts with your file. So those few steps that I said before about doing an integration start with configuring your file for integration. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at my file. So what's in here? I have a single table. It's called events. There's no relationships or anything like that. There's a bunch of fields in here, some of which are required, some of which are not. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a layout that soSIMPLE is going to use to access those events. And the accessing of events we have a couple of different options, but we recommend the one that uses server-side technology to access your events, because it's much faster. It can be dynamically loaded and updated. So we're talking about server-side for all of this. So what we're doing is creating a layout for soSIMPLE to access your data using server-side. So I'm going to create a new layout. I'm going to call it soSIMPLE. And it doesn't have to be fancy. All I need to do is get those fields on there. Any fields that I want soSIMPLE to see, for the calendar to see, I need to have on that layout. There's one field that's even more particular, and that's the resource field. The resource field, in order to show those columns and those rows of resources, I need to assign to a value list. And when I say assign to a value list, I mean I can choose any one of these things, drop-down list, pop-up menu, any one of them, and assign it a value list. And we support any type of value list you can throw at us. We're using a custom value list, but we'll also support a key value list. We'll support multi-keys. In other words, multiple keys in one field. We can support a join table. We support a key different from a value. So any type of value list can be used here. And did I assign it? I did. So it needs to have the value list shown on this layout. The other part of prep is we need to go into security, and we need to assign privileges for this. What I mean by that, so there are a couple users we're concerned about. What we're setting up right now is a new user called soSIMPLE, and it can be any name you want. But this is the user that we're going to give access only from PHP and Data API, so that soSIMPLE can retrieve the events it needs to show in the calendar. So that aspect can work on server side. So I'm going to set up soSIMPLE. And there, by the way, there is a tutorial. This will be published online for reference later, and there's already a tutorial that goes through these steps on our website. soSIMPLE, and I'm just going to, even just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to make this the same password. Obviously, wouldn't recommend that. I'm going to do, I already have a privilege set for that. The main part about this privilege set that I created that you want to know is it has to have access via PHP. Recommend giving it Data API as well, because we have that as a feature if you turn it on, that you can use the Data API in concert or separately from the PHP API. What we don't give it is FileMaker network access. So this user cannot access the file using the client, using FileMaker Pro client. So that's my user. And the other thing you want to know is that there is one little tag you want to make sure that all of your users, when they log on, I didn't mean to change password, sorry. All your users, in addition to the FM app, also need this one, the FM URL script. That's just required for soSIMPLE to interact with FileMaker to run the script. The allow URLs to perform FileMaker scripts needs to be checked off for all of your end users. That's step one. We configure the file with permissions and we set up this layout. Then we have to step over to here and we say, I want to create a new calendar. And this is my demo calendar. And I'm going to be using FileMaker Server. And I'm using client-side scripting. And I'll show you what that other one is in a few minutes when I'm done with this integration. It's actually very cool. So one thing that's nice to know is it does store all of your previous data sources. So we're creating a new data source, and this is an iCal data source. We can also overlay iCal feeds. So I'm going to, the database is already open in the background, so I don't need to reopen it. Tell them what fields are needed, and I'm going to open up my calendar setup. And so I'm going to call this file demo, I think, just to keep it clean. Move that to the middle. It's called demo, and I have to choose the database from here. And the configuration tool is now looking to see what layouts are available inside the demo file. I choose soSIMPLE. I'm going to use username and password that I just set up. And now I just go through and I choose the fields I need. Date start, date end, time start and end, and the unique ID for that event, and the description field. There's a field for filtering your events. There's a field for event resource field. There's a color field, lets you define what color you want, what text color you want. There's a special tooltip field that lets you do rich text tooltips that we're not using in this demo. Unscheduled events flag we talked about for unscheduled events, and display type we talked about. So there's all different fields that you can expand if you want, but if you don't want it, you don't need it for now. And then finally, what script you want to run when you double click and you drag on the calendar, and that's the soSIMPLE calendar action script. Normally, this will actually be red when you first go in because we didn't paste the scripts in, but it looks like I forgot to clean up that part of the file, and the script is already in there. So I'm going to remove it. But first, let me just finish this part. Go next. It tells you about those privileges, and it tells you to copy the scripts to the clipboard, which I actually usually save for later. So I'm going to click OK here, and then it says when you're done, choose one of the Use Now buttons in the lower right. And so that's the way you implement it. I'm going to go in here just real quick so you can see. I'm going to remove these. It's done from the get-go. Okay, so still go back to that one script. So I'm going to go back in here. I created the calendar. I can choose, however, so the data sources demo. That's the one I just created. I'm going to set up the same calendars that I used before because I like that calendar layout. but this lets you change different layouts, whether you have these things showing on the left, which ones, whether on the left or right, which menus show. If they're menus at all, they could just be buttons, what navigation you have. That's what all of the layout's about. The theme tells you fonts and colors and stuff like that. And then the options are that left-hand panel I showed you before in the starter solution, plus a whole bunch of other default options. Things like the height of this grid, and whether or not you can drag and drop, whether or not the whole calendar is read-only, different things like that. So I'm ready to implement this. I want to make sure the events are actually there, because that's sort of the fun part of this. So the event popped in just by having connected the demo. The events are here. They just happen to have been set up for dates a while back. But there are all my events. So I'm going to take this calendar, I'm going to put it inside my solution now. So it says open up your file, copy your calendar scripts to the clipboard. So I'm going to take those scripts and I'm going to copy them. I'm just close that for the time being. Go into my demo file, go to my scripts workspace, click on the left-hand side here and choose paste. And what I did is I pasted this whole folder. It's a single folder to keep it relatively clean. We may be removing some of these scripts in the future because a lot of them are utility scripts that most people don't tend to use, but there are a couple of important ones. The main one I want to point out to you is the soSIMPLE calendar action script. And this is exactly the same script that I ran a debugger on before. So you saw the script run. What you want to know about this is, first of all, that those variables are set at runtime. That the event ID and what you're moving from and to, that's all set when you double click it. So you don't need to do anything to the script here. But there are a couple of variables that are set that are important to know about, and these are the names of the fields that we're using for all of our field mapping. And we use this in the script. This script can be completely edited by you, and frankly, you don't even need those aspects of it. We put it in there so that we can use indirection when the main reason we use indirection is so that you can copy and paste this into your solution and have it just work right out of the gate without having to make any changes. So I did want to show you where this is. It also tells you what layouts you're going to use for soSIMPLE when it makes changes, and which one you're going to use when you're doing data entry. So in other words, when you double click and open it. So I'm actually just going to go into here and change this to events. I think there's an events layout I like to use. Okay. The rest of it's just like I showed you before, all these different things. Event type is new. What are we going to do? Event type is edit, and you can just make changes as you feel in this file. All right, that was step one of the two steps. There is a recopy, just the variable steps, in case any of those three steps at the top of the script change. You can just recopy them and put them back in. The next step is copy the web viewer object to the clipboard. And this is what's going to be inside the web viewer object. Now I'm going to go back into my solution. I'm going to go into layout mode. And I'm going to do a new layout. Sorry for the command key equivalence, but it's a little quicker for me to do it that way. And I'm just going to make this calendar. This is actually where I'm putting my calendar. And this doesn't have to be on the events table. I just happen to have one table in this file. Usually I put this on sort of a global interface only table. But remember I copied that to my clipboard. Now when I choose paste, there it is. There's my calendar. You can't tell it's a calendar yet, but there's the URL in a big web viewer. And I'm going to go back into browse mode. And we should see the whole calendar show up integrated into my solution. So this stuff is no longer necessary. I can close all that. It's not open in show window. This is a standalone server hosted calendar. And so now I can go in here and I can create another event. It opens up my event window. This is the description of the event. Oh, come on. This script. Sorry, I'm going to leave it like that. This is the description of the event. I can drag it, and it's now a working calendar. And I even have, because I set up those resources, I have John, Henry, Joe, and Alfredo showing here. And I can create an event for Alfredo. There's Alfredo's event. Sorry, Henry's event. I meant to be Alfredo. Alfredo's event. And there it's been changed to Alfredo. So that is a fully integrated calendar into your solution. All those other things that I was talking about with the searches and the filtering and hiding tasks, hiding this left-hand panel, all of that is a matter of changing the URL. So if I only wanted to show, if I wanted to hide that taskbar, I would do it right here. I would say hide. I don't remember the exact thing, but I would type in hide task equals 1. That's not what it's called. And then that would hide the taskbar. I'm not actually going to do it because I don't remember the exact code. But filtering, likewise, if I wanted to filter on a field that's on that layout, I can do the same thing. I can just change that URL. Most people will do that using a global field they'll put in the header or the sidebar like we did in our solution. That would be a global field that basically just changes the web viewer calculation. So that filter, what's cool is that it carries over to the other publishing methods. So if we were filtering by a particular resource, let's say, and I was only showing a couple of resources, that's what I wanted to say. So next month, we're going to be talking on February 5th, we're going to actually go into detail about setting up these filters. We're going to be talking about setting up a very basic filter where you just filter the calendar the same way for everyone, dynamic filters, which is the URL option that I'm talking about here. And then we're going to be talking about advanced filters, which is where you can use the server-side script to get into some really heavy-duty business logic to determine what shows on your calendar and how it shows up. So please join us on February 5th if you're interested in more about filtering. So what I wanted to show you left from here is I'm going to go back into my settings file. This is the demo file. This is the demo calendar I just created. What I want to show you in here is how we can take this very, very quickly and put it on the web. So this is our demo file. Let's say we filtered it by something, right? All that did was change the URL. The way to get it on the web is the easiest way is you duplicate it. All that did is make an exact copy of the calendar, keeping the exact same settings. And I'm going to call it server side this time. And I'm going to change it to server side async. The difference between client side script and server side async: client side script runs a script inside FileMaker Pro client or FileMaker Go client. So it uses scripting inside those two tools, inside those two applications. Server-side async does all of its synchronization automatically using server-side technology, using either PHP or the data API, depending how it's been set up. I'm going to click on Use in Web Page, and this actually doesn't even require using WebDirect licenses. This is now an exact copy of the calendar sitting in a web page without WebDirect licensing, with the events, with drag and drop capabilities. So a quick little flash that actually updated the event. And all the same views and all the same techniques that we use on a regular calendar, on the FileMaker Pro calendar, you can now just push out to the web. So really cool feature there. And then if you're editing events or creating new events, we give you a JavaScript dialog. And we actually have the ability to customize your solution at this point within WebDirect to use your FileMaker layouts and your FileMaker workflow to use that script. But that's right now a custom development option. Generally speaking, what you're going to see is this, and you could make this also read-only. A lot of people use these web calendars to publish to their vendors or to their customers so that they can see their calendar, and then they would put something in the URL that would limit it to see their events. So it would say just, like we had before, meeting, category equals meeting. If we had such a field in here, if we had a field in here called category, and that would say meeting, that would be the value of meeting. And that filter also plays through in iCal and Outlook, which I'm not going to demo right now, but that's the other technology we support. and mobile phones as well, smartphones. Has its own special view that looks something like that, day, week, month, a very simplified view. So that's my nickel tour of soSIMPLE Calendar and how to integrate into your solution. I'm sure you have plenty of questions for me. Hopefully, we've been doing a good job of compiling them. I've got to now figure out how to get back to this app to stop sharing my screen and try to answer some of your questions.
Hi, Ken. We actually have one question so far.
Oh, people ask your questions. It's such a great job of covering everything. I'm sure nobody has any questions.
Right. How do the different views appear in WebDirect? I guess the concern is, are they different when you're in WebDirect?
I guess I should keep my screen shared, but the short answer is actually, we'll share my screen again. The short answer is that they're identical in WebDirect. All the views are identical. I'm not sure if the question was answered before I actually bopped it. Oh, in WebDirect.
In WebDirect.
Okay. So WebDirect versus web, I guess, is probably the question. So in here, this is on the web. If I put this into WebDirect, it looks identical. All the views are identical. Even by default, if you double click an event, this is the window you're going to see in WebDirect as well, because natively we don't have the ability to run a script. What I alluded to before, which I guess I'll talk a little bit about, is we do have a technology that we use, a technique, I should say, that we can use. It requires a little bit of custom development, not a lot of time, but a little bit of custom development on our end. We can plug into your solution and make it so that your script runs the same way as it does in client-side scripting. And so instead of double clicking this and having this JavaScript window pop open, which is the default behavior, instead it would actually run your client-side script and open up the layout the same way it did on the client side. So that is a possibility now. It wasn't 6 months ago, but we've actually developed technology to do that. But other than that, the views are identical between the two. Between all three, the web, WebDirect, and FileMaker Pro and Go.
All right, another question. What ports need to be open on the server?
This all runs ideally on port 443. I say ideally because you can choose when you publish it to be HTTP or HTTPS, but it all happens on standard web ports. Port 80, port 443 for secure, which we recommend, and 5003, which is FileMaker's default port, which you need just to open up the FileMaker files.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Someone asked, can you change the name or the label resource to something else, like staff?
Oh, great question.
Room or...
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. You can change it to anything you want. Am I showing my screen? Right? I am, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the set of options we have, so just to give you a quick insight on what all these options are, there are a whole bunch of options in here. There's an additional tab here called labels. This allows you to change any label in the calendar. So the answer is yes. You would change resources right here, and that would change resources to something else. So the short answer is yes. The other part of that is for international users, it's completely localizable. So not only do we have the ability to change individual items, we can also go in here and we can say, I want to go in here and say, I want the whole menu to appear in a different language. I want it to appear in French. And maybe for this calendar, I just want the 3 months on the left. I don't want the task list because I actually don't have unscheduled tasks. But now when I choose those, what you're going to see is the entire, so these labels, like I showed you before, can be customized still. But all the ones that are automatically generated, like Sunday, October 28th, is going to be now changed for your local language. So sort of two sets of labels. So anything that's not translated is going to be done manually, where I showed you before, and then there's a whole localization piece.
Okay, you've been working on a Mac. Someone asked, does this work on Windows?
Yes, completely cross-platform. Everything that works on Mac works on Windows the same way.
Okay, we have a couple questions about coloring. Can you customize the colors?
So yes, you can customize the colors. I'm not sure what you're talking, whether you're speaking of the events, because the events themselves are colored based on a field in your database. So you can choose to have a field in your database that automatically colors your events, and that can be done in either any web recognized color name like red, green, blue, purple, cyan, or it can be done using hex. Right.
And I think the important thing is that the example given was I have all these different categories and want them to be different colors. It can be that color field can be a calculation, so you can calculate the color.
That's right. Yeah. And I was going to add one more thing, is that you can also, in addition to those two ways of defining it, and it usually is the result of a calculation. It usually will be tied to something like a category or a status or something like that. The third format, in addition to these two, one is very easy. One is a hex code. This is not the right. And then the third one is you can include a opacity on it, and I thought that was a kind of a cool feature too, that you can do RGB with an opacity, so you can actually see through the events a little bit. I'm just going to make this a red event, and there it is, a red event.
All right. Can you just run down what you need to install on the server? What needs to be on the server?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So there is actually a page. I'll show you the two pages I mentioned. So this page. I'll mention the two pages. So one is all right.
In addition to this simple calendar settings file, which does need to be hosted.
Right. Yeah. So there are in our web page. The page I've been talking about so far is, I know this is not what you asked, but I'll get to that in a sec. The 5-minute integration, server powered. This is the place that I was talking about. Basically goes over the second half of the presentation from today. The actual integration process. The installation is, where is it? I saw it. Server powered installation is right here, and that tells you and this is included there's a link to this included in your download. The graphics are a little bit old, but the technology is still the same, and we update it for different server versions. So basically, it's a folder called soSIMPLE gets put onto your the PHP area of your site, and there's a subfolder within the FileMaker installation, the FileMaker server installation, that you put this, and this describes where to put that. And then you have two files, the soSIMPLE calendar and soSIMPLE calendar settings, and both of those get uploaded to server. Once you've played around with it and you're happy, you don't need to keep the second one. You don't need to keep the calendar file, the starter file. But you do need to always keep the settings file on your server, because that's where all the code for the calendars to be rendered, that's where it all lives.
Okay. Question, can the calendar be published to Google, iCal, Apple Calendar, Outlook?
Yes, it can. And that's what this button is about. So it's iCal is the format name, but it equally applies to anything that can subscribe to an iCal source, which includes Outlook, it includes Google, it includes, as long as the port is accessible from your server, right? It's coming from your server, or more specifically from wherever those PHP pages are being stored, which is usually on your FileMaker server. If Google can get to that page, you give it that same URL. And actually, I'm going to click on this. You can see what it is. It's the same exact URL that you had before, with all the filters in place, anything else you wanted, simply followed by feed equals iCal. And if you plug that into any iCal compatible program, which includes most of them, you can subscribe to your soSIMPLE events that way, and that would overlay. So it can go both directions. You can overlay your soSIMPLE events onto your Google Calendar, and you can also overlay Google Calendar events onto your soSIMPLE calendar. So it overlays in both directions.
Someone asked, do we have a way to collect time blocks by resource for time billing? And I think that's getting into the functionality that you would be working into your FileMaker solution.
Right. Yeah. The main goal is soSIMPLE is to give you a user interface that can be easily integrated into your file. The business logic of what types of events you're showing and what those events mean to the rest of your business is part of your file and part of your logic. Having said that, we built a lot of complex solutions around soSIMPLE that, for example, will show both actual time and estimated time next to each other with the ability to turn one or the other type of event off using the filtering mechanism. And then they show up in different colors. So it supports that type of use, but that's not actually writing the scripts that collect that time isn't part of soSIMPLE. It's part of your own FileMaker solution.
Okay, going back to Outlook, iCal, et cetera, that includes Exchange Server?
It includes the Outlook client. I don't know if Exchange Server, I think I've heard of issues with Exchange Server directly subscribing to iCal. I'm honestly not sure.
So maybe we can discuss
but the Outlook client that many people use with Exchange Server can usually import it by itself without the support of Exchange Server.
How do we release updates?
So we have in the settings file this little gear icon where you do your registration and other utilities. There's one here that says check for updates. And what it does is it checks our server to see, and it'll actually do this at startup when you open up the settings file too. So my version is 3.9. The latest version that's been published to our server is 3.8.3.1. So we haven't put this on our testing server yet. On our publishing server yet. But that's basically where it notifies you of an upgrade. We also will email you, and we'll usually post it on social media too. But we'll email current users of the calendar of updates. The update itself will either happen with a button in here that'll say update me now, in which case it'll grab the new code and ingest it and put it into this configuration file, the soSIMPLE calendar settings file, or it will say we've made changes that we can't update that way, which is more often the case. And in that scenario, it gives you a download link where you download the and this is available freely from our website too, but you download the latest one. And one thing that we've done, which supports upgrades, is that we've separated the calendar logic from your file logic. And what that means is that we can update all your features and bugs and whatever else, but all your features and tools and add new views and all of that just by updating this settings file. And we have a routine where we import your settings so you don't lose any of your settings. And the reason I say that is what happens is it just updates the settings file. You don't actually have to update your own file unless there's specific features that you want to take advantage of. And we walk you through how to do that.
Okay.
Very long-winded way to answer that. I'm sorry.
Can you switch to the timeline view for a moment? I think this question has to do with the timeline.
Sure. Let me do it in English so I know which one the timeline view is.
Okay. And I think it also has to do with customization beyond what is available. Someone asks, in the timeline view, can the resource names be colored, I guess, according to colors that you...
resource names themselves, and that would apply to this view as well, the resource names up here. Yeah, that by default, let me think if there is by default a way to do that. It's possible. I honestly have never been asked that. And so I will say it's possible that it can be done just adding a little bit of code to the resource name, and maybe you can wrap it with a little HTML to color it in the resource name itself.
So
But if not, then there's customization we could do to color code it for you.
Yes, and let's remind everyone that we do have a forum for questions like this, where we can go back and forth with questions like this that have stumped the presenter.
Stumped the presenter forum. We should have just one forum just for that.
Right. Someone else writes about updates. Someone bought a version several years ago, never implemented it. Sorry to hear that, but wanted to know how do they get the newest version. I guess also, or I would assume, are they eligible for an upgrade? What's the upgrade policy?
So the upgrade policy is you get free upgrades for a year when you purchase this product. The second year after that, so from 1 year after that until 2 years after that, after you purchase, you get 50% off on the then current pricing. After that 2 years, you're pretty much repurchasing the product. If there's a special case and we need to evaluate that, by all means, please do reach out. But that's our upgrade policy: is you get 1 year of free upgrades and then another year of 50% off.
Okay. Oh, someone would like to have a hierarchical task list where you can expand and collapse groups of tasks.
Oh, I like it.
Nice.
That would be definitely custom development. I would contact us directly about that.
Yes, do contact us. We're available for custom development, also help with integration, and we are FileMaker developers, so you can contact us for help with any of that.
Right.
And that's also maybe a good thing to put on the features wish list.
That's right. Yeah. There are a few that fall into that category. There's also the idea of probably shouldn't open up Pandora's box, but the idea of filtering this resources as well for different types of resources, which we've discussed doing as well.
Oh, I have one more question which came via chat.
Yes.
And this, I think, goes to background colors. They would like to show the available working hours of an employee in a vague background color over which you can schedule events.
Right, and so that's identical to the block time. So,
actually, it would be the background time, because they want to schedule events.
Right. As I was going to say, it's identical with that, right? So if John, for example, is available during this time, but you don't want to actually schedule time for him. Sorry, this is the demo database. I didn't want to do this one. Let me go back into our. That, by the way, that pop-up window you saw about 3 times during this presentation is unusual, and it shouldn't be happening. So that's it. I tried to squash it right before the presentation, and it still came up. So I'll have to find out what's going on. But that you don't normally see that in your own solution. So what I wanted to do was, let's just go like this. That should open up the demo file. Let me go to my calendar so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to create an event from here to here. This is the time that is available for appointments. And I'm not even going to type anything into event. I can if I want, but for this purpose, I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave that blank. I'm going to make it a background. Last time I chose block, and that stopped people from using it. So I'm going to do background and maybe use green for this. And this, again, this color field, I'm picking from a list, but it can be any color. I can use any one of those 3 methods I talked about before, so I can make it even more transparent than I automatically do with my background events. And there's a green area, and that's probably darker green than I would have liked, but I can now drag on top of it, and I can schedule events. So that's not it's not a blocking event. That's just a background area, and I can indicate that's a space I can schedule stuff.
Okay, there was a question about resolution. I guess this is probably the last question. A question about the resolution of the calendar. It's not a bitmapped object.
Yeah, no, this is it's a web-based calendar,
Right.
and so the resolution is standard resolution. I'm wondering if that question has to do with the presentation we're doing, and maybe it's looking a little blurry in the presentation.
Yeah, someone was comparing, I don't know if they're still there, if they could say if they were doing this on their own computer or if they were looking at the presentation, thought it looked sharper on a web viewer. Sharper on a web page than in a web viewer.
I see. Yeah, I don't know if I've noticed that. I mean, it looks pretty good here.
It should be the same, or well,
it should be the same. I've never run into any problem with the resolution. I'm assuming you're talking about. Does it say it talks about blurriness in there? Is that?
I just said it's sharper in.
Yeah. I have not noticed that, to be honest with you, but that's something we can look into if someone's having an issue with that.
Okay. Someone lost their purchase email. Why don't you just contact us via email and we'll resend it. The limit of 5 data source files. Are we talking about 5 linked databases?
Right. So I'm glad someone asked about that because we do have that on our purchasing. It sounds like a real restriction. It's actually never come up as a restriction. The purpose of that is that the licenses, and I might as well show you what the license is. I didn't talk about pricing, and I should have. So these are the ones we've been describing. This $5.99. We're actually offering a discount this week for you only for having sat through the entire presentation. You get to have a 20% off of this cost for this week only. You simply enter the word training at checkout. So you click on here, and I think there's a offer button. We can click to do that. But in any case, you click buy now, and you get and you type in training. So this is the one we've been talking about. This one adds the ability to also do standalone. The license is specifically unlimited within a single organization. So the idea is you're a developer, you've got 5 clients. This license is for one of those clients, not for all 5. And so the 5 data source is intended to limit the ability to have multiple clients subscribed. The technical back end of that, what's actually happening is it's going to restrict you if you have. So I can have it's 5 data source files. So, and it only has to do with FileMaker files. So I can access 20 tables within the same file. And I can access, 100 different calendars and 100 different views of those 20 tables. But I can only have up to 5 individual files that can link to a single calendar, to a single installation.
And that doesn't count any other files that happen to be related to the file you are accessing.
That's correct.
And is there any limit on the number of users?
No limit in users, as long as they're all within the same organization on the same server. One server is the other. I think I have that in here, but in any case, you can, within one server, one organization, unlimited users.
Okay,
so
I think that's it.
Did you pop up that coupon for them?
Yes.
Excellent. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. This was recorded. This is the first time we've actually used this particular software, so I hope it will all the recording will work well. If you have any comments about it, I think you can also automatically be asked for feedback. So please do give us your feedback and let us know what you'd like to hear in March. Next month, in February 5th, we will be talking about filtering and both advanced and URL server filtering. And I think that covers it from my end. So I just wanted to thank you from soSIMPLE Software for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. Have a great afternoon.